Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Future of FinTech panel. I'll be the moderator today. My name is James Loperfido. I am the Vice President of Business Development for a Japanese consultancy called Soramitsu. And with me, I have next to me from your left to right, Stephen Pear, the CEO of BitPay, one of the largest, or if not the largest, processor of Bitcoin payments in the world. And Angeleen Wilson, founder of the Georgia Blockchain Coalition, followed by Xiaochen Zhang, president of FinTech for Good. So I'll introduce myself first so you can forget me in the same order and pass it along to our panelists to introduce themselves, and we'll dive into discussion followed by some Q&A if everybody wants to participate a little bit for the last 10 minutes or so. Again, my name is James Loperfido. I head up business development for a Japanese blockchain consultancy called Soramitsu. We built what's called a private permission blockchain within the Hyperledger greenhouse. It's called Iroha, and we're using that for applications in the payments and financial industry. Our most notable project would be overhauling the retail payment infrastructure for the Central Bank of Cambodia using digital currency and a mobile forward solution. So I'll pass it along to Stephen so he can introduce himself and speak a little bit about BitPay and his foray into the digital world.
Sure. So my name is Stephen Pear. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called BitPay. We're headquartered here locally. We've been in business since 2011, and which makes us the world's oldest blockchain company. We are the world's #1 provider of blockchain payment solutions, and we process a little over $1 billion a year in payments on our platform. We support cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and a number of others on our platform to enable businesses globally to accept, to receive, and make payments. So yeah, that's
awesome. Really?
Hi, Angeleen Wilson, Director of Georgia Blockchain Coalition, also blockchain engineer for Bayer Corporation on the Crop Science Division. Georgia Blockchain Coalition is just to really unite, amplify the efforts existing in Georgia and the communities, and really just bring the best education that we can.
Thank you. My name is Xiaochen Zhang, and I'm the president of FinTech for Good. And we are a global venture studio for decentralized finance solution. And from this, we cover different aspects in education, venture building, media, DeFi Alliance, acceleration program, and funding. And something related to today's topic, that's we also build a small ecosystem for government as service, which include the registry, smart contract finance, and the smart laws. And in responding to the launch announcement of a Libra project, that we work with a number of ecosystem to just launch this Libra camp, and which are now in the call for application. We have received around 50 applications, and it is a 10-week of acceleration program that you can really welcome to apply for. And we also just build, to build ecosystem, that we do a lot of events and also shows. And this is one of our show called the FinTech for Blockchain 100. As you can see, that we have speakers from from McDonald's, from the Prime Minister of Bermuda, and many others. If whoever you want to just hear from the show, you can just send to me recommendation, and we'll just include them. And in the next few months, if you're in any part of the world, and welcome to join some of those events. I think, just next week in Philadelphia, there will be the convention, and then November, Bitcoin and the Blockchain Conference in New York, and Malta AI and Blockchain Summit in November, and also the Blockchain Show in Singapore. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. So I want to start by addressing the current status of digital money, blockchain, kind of the more bleeding edge technologies, and what's being put in use today, so that the audience can have a good idea of what's current, and then we can kind of explore potential both with respect to the global economy and local ones as well. So if you've been following the news at all, as Xiaochen just mentioned, there was the debut of the potential of a currency called the Libra coin, which it really drew attention to the regulatory environment and needs for the United States to address transformations in digital currency, which many have thought has lagged behind the rest of the world in this innovative space. So I just wanted to go down the line here and start with Steven, asking kind of what's the general state of the world with respect to FinTech innovation, especially as it pertains to digital money?
Well, you know, our belief at BitPay is that all payments will be conducted on a blockchain in the future. Our mission is very simple: to build the best platform for blockchain payments and you know, maintain our #1 position. So you mentioned Facebook Libra. It's a very exciting development. It's a very recent development, and I think, you know, people on Capitol Hill definitely took notice of that, because now you have a platform in Facebook that can reach billions of users, you know, literally billions of users. And, you know, in the world of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, they've always viewed it as something they need to pay attention to and watch, but they felt like they had time. With Facebook's announcement, suddenly it's like practically overnight you could onboard billions of users into cryptocurrency. So it's kind of definitely stepped up the urgency for policymakers and regulators to think about this and get ahead of it. But it's not slowing down. I mean, there's, you know, we kind of thought maybe they would take a step back, but I think all indications are that they're moving as fast as they can, and they do fully intend to launch it in the timeline that they announced. So, you know, it's coming. And Facebook Libra is a little bit different than, say, Bitcoin. Bitcoin is it's more like a new kind of digital commodity that makes a new kind of database work. And so the supply function is fixed, so the price of Bitcoin reacts very, very much with changes in demand. Whereas with Facebook Libra, they have what's called the Libra Reserve, which holds reserves backing Libra, and their goal is to make that currency stable over long periods of time. And interestingly, it's not backed one-to-one to any currency. So they want to stabilize it in terms of purchasing power of real goods and services, not just peg it to the dollar, for example. So what will happen there is the supply will change. They have control over the supply. The supply will change in reaction to changes in demand, so that they can maintain a stable purchasing price over long periods of time. It's really fascinating, and it's exciting to watch. I think what they announced was effectively a private competitor to central banks using new technology, blockchain technology. So for me, I've always felt like Bitcoin itself would not directly compete with central banks, but something like Facebook Libra could. And, you know, now we have a few competitors being announced. So.
Sort of to piggyback what Steven just said about policymakers watching, they are watching, but blockchain does not slow down. It will be integrated in every industry from a long-term standpoint. But I just sat down with Georgia Caucus, and they said, what do we do? And I don't really feel like I necessarily had the direct, you know, magic bullet of the answer, but I just said, you know, watch, educate, find the right education, which I think the state of Georgia is getting really good at, and partnering with, you know, companies that already have education incubation processes in place to systematically come together with education forums like universities in Georgia. But my biggest thing was figure out if there's a sandbox that you need to invest in from a money standpoint. But they are watching from a policymaker standpoint. It's just what's the next step and how they should be involved.
Yeah, and when we just look at the blockchain-based new innovation in the payment space, it's fascinating. And a few years ago, without blockchain, there was a thing like a concept called cashless society, basically using mobile payment without cash, and it's transforming our life. But that is still very limited. And with blockchain, we see totally different individual experience. Thinking about that, we have a digital wallet, and through some application like VaultX, you can just earn digital currency by just watching some video and all that. They're becoming a job. And then that's, if you just use that digital currency you owned to just use it in the digital currency lending platform, you can get interest from money sitting in your wallet. And also, if you just want to just use the currency as the staking practice and then to just lend money, and then you have your actually bank within a digital currency. So within a wallet, that's basically your, as an individual, the total experience in terms of financial access completely changed. Of course, that's it's not only about consumer experience or individual experience. It's also about government. When we just look at, for example, CBDC, central bank digital currency. When central banks started using CBDC as an instrument, then they can just really have all the data: who is using their money, how the money is being circulated, and also how to just implement their monetary policy with the target group much more effectively, not to see the cost-saving component. As a government official who provide public service, you can target those group of people who you want to help with subsidies, with different type of remittance and all different type of service without having to go through a third party. You can directly deposit that money into those who you want to help. And then when we just look at digital currency, blockchain-based digital identity, where that's each government agency plus the private sector have a much better customer profile, and in using this customer profile, that you can provide much better service which reduce the cost in terms of a lot of service that we talk about risk. And if you just have all the digital footprint of each individual, and if they just gave you access to all those data, then you will just provide a service which much more reduce the risk, which can reduce your premium and all that. So in general, we can see that blockchain-based solution is really transforming not only the individual level experience, but also the government and also the whole economy.
Yeah, I think by now you guys have probably figured out that blockchain is a central focus in the FinTech industry as an evolution in the way we operate and use digital money. And I think Xiaochen is loosely referring to the People's Bank of China's new initiative with their central bank digital currency, which will allow a great deal of data to be captured, not only in urban communities, but rural ones as well, where people may otherwise not have had access to bank accounts, but now generally can have access to money through mobile technology. So that's probably one of the greatest innovations, which is a result of proof of concept through Bitcoin as a currency, using blockchain, which isn't a new idea, right? The blockchain as distributed ledgers has been around since the 70s or 80s, correct me if I'm wrong. And now that we have proof that this thing of peer-to-peer value transfer can work, and we can allow for rapid, near frictionless exchange of value across borders, it unlocks a whole new dimension of value exchange and also rights and freedoms that come along with this technology. So I think it leads me to my next question, which is maybe with respect to cities or touching upon the topic of decentralization and having liquidity across borders, what in your guys' minds does a utopian society with respect to value exchange and payments and financial technology look like? Xiaochen, I'd like you to start with this since you have a really good global perspective with your initiatives furthering and accelerating blockchain and digital money evolutions.
Sure, and the reason why we do FinTech focus is really, it's fascinating to working with all different stakeholders, working with government, and many times then the government come to us and say that, we have our existing service, including, registry of citizens, provide basic service. We have the legal system. We want to regulate and comply and all that. And we also need to provide finance and other service for our citizens. We in general need to improve that kind of the service provision and improve the accountability. And this is not not only in the US, but in any part of the world. I was just back from Vienna, where that's more than 35 mayors from different countries coming together and looking at how to just use blockchain-based solution to address a couple of issues. One is cross-border remittance, where that's across different cities, then you can just have citizens to transfer money and with really reduce the cost so that it can just help democratize finance. There's another very important element they are looking at is using different wallet to just to provide cross-border service, so that, for example, it's around tourism, it's around cross-border transportation within one blockchain-based solution that you can just combine the digital identity and together with the digital wallet, together with the smart contract, where that's spending or deposit in one country, then you can spend in another country without going through those exchange rate risk and also to figure out all the identity problems. And there's also from the registration side that in many countries that the land registration is a thing which is just a constraint of scaling up the development or real estate or smart city kind of development, and to issue blockchain-based land registration solution, where that's not only that it can just help the owner of the land feel much more comfortable, that because those identity the land registry they only have, but not. But also can help the government to really improve their efficiency, to help the different partners to access to the same record without having to go through a lot of third-party service provision. And this is around the smart city side. But in general, if you are just working for USCIS, for example, you're dealing with a lot of foreigners or refugees or people who moving from other country to here, and then those people who don't have any credit history or any record, and which actually is not true. They have their record in their home country. How to just leverage that to just bring those individuals who come to your country becoming assets, not liability, and that's blockchain-based identity solution can play a huge role. And in addition to that, tracing and tracking is very important to improve government accountability. And currently, that when you just look at tracing and tracking and monitoring evaluation, not only is it costly, time-consuming, but also the result is really not comfortable, and many times that citizens are challenging the government, challenging the international organization for those results. But with the blockchain-based tracing and tracking solution, those data are in your hand, and which nobody can just tamper that. With this, that can really help the government, help the international organization to make their result accountable.
Thanks, Xiaochen.
If you're just referring to, if you're asking me utopia, and from a design perspective, when you speak of decentralization, the three things come to mind is accomplishing these epic goals, is building these as products, is feasibility, what is it costing, is it helping people across borders. There's more people that have mobile phones than they have access to the internet. Is there accessibility? How can we make that easy to accomplish a utopia of using the technology? What's the usability? Is it easy to use from a design perspective for the user? These are things just from a product standpoint that blockchain is still working on, and I feel like these are from a design and building something you have to keep in mind, so that way it can maybe at one point become a comparison to utopia.
Well, I'm going to take it a different direction. I'm a fan of dystopian science fiction. I'm going to say, how could this all become dystopian rather than utopian? Cool. There was a few years ago, somebody by the name of Mike Hearn, who's now VP of Engineering, I think, at R3. He had a great video where he talked about how, this great future where all these, and to tie it back to the previous panel, where all these autonomous vehicles would be milling around the cities, and he stated, well, not only will they drive themselves, they'll also own themselves, which is really cool to think about. And you actually can do that. You can have cars that drive around, and they actually are, sort of self-sovereign. They actually own themselves. And you can do this with smart contracts and blockchain technology. So imagine, you need to get from one place to another. You pay to have the vehicle show up. It drives you somewhere, drops you off. It earns revenue. And then with that revenue, it goes and parks itself in a parking spot. It pays maybe Park Mobile to park there. And then it starts paying the meter to feed electrons into the battery. And it continues to do its thing. And then eventually it needs repairs, so maybe it goes and hires some repair services to repair it. And then, maybe toward its end of life, it actually starts to fall out of favor in its old technology. So it goes, parks itself in a parking garage, the batteries run out, and it's dead, and it's done. It's basically died. And then other cars start to come and harvest the parts off of it that they need. And I said, well, I said, Mike, let's take this one step further. What if they don't wait until it's dead? What if they wait until it's a little wobbly and they start harvesting the parts off of other vehicles to make themselves run better? And then they're going to need to arm themselves and defend themselves, right? And once they start arming and defending themselves, then,
sounds like Terminator.
Then yeah, exactly. I said, Mike, you've just outlined how Skynet's going to be born. So. Anyway, all that stuff right up until the point of Skynet, I think, is possible. And, we are going to have autonomous vehicles that drive around and that actually own themselves and that we pay for. It's going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, I think that with the convergence of 5G, IoT, digital identity, both with respect to human beings and devices themselves, the possibilities are difficult to imagine. That said, I want to kind of bring it back down to a practical perspective here and ask each of you guys what you think an immediate utility or use case is that a typical citizen of an American city could identify with, and when could they expect something like this to happen? Stephen, you're already implementing something that affects people's daily lives. So maybe you have future products or ideas or things that you think should be done in the near future to make people's lives a little bit more seamless and easy.
Well, right now, today, you can pay your cell phone bill through our platform if you would like to use it right now. But yeah, looking in the not too distant future, I mentioned the cars aspect. You can imagine that instead of actually having to swipe a card and pay for, charging your battery in your car, you could just drive in, plug in, and walk away. And the car would sit there and actually do a streaming payment where it's paying in real time, incrementally for every little bit of charge that feeds into that car. And similar flow-based payments are possible in the not too distant future, like paying for water, home electricity, gas services, things like that. Could be very much pay as you go. And when I say pay as you go, it's not just like swiping in a one-time charge. It's actually micro payments flowing and triggering the reverse flow of electrons or water or whatever.
Maybe take it a step further in the convergence of three technologies: AI suggesting data, blockchain recording the reality of data, and then IoT doing that maybe from an automated standpoint. There are refrigerators that you don't realize, that smart refrigerators that from what they're trying to build with autonomous cars, that by the time you get home, you'll be able to see the reality of what you've done in the activity in these vehicles that you, not necessarily you're driving, but that are driving you. That is something actually is in the works, and it's something very important I think we all need to consider of how we're, again, sharing our information, but taking advantage of how that information and the activity that we are doing throughout the day and how we can record that and utilize that.
Xiaochen, I just want to leave 5 minutes for Q&A if we can abbreviate
Sure.
to that point.
And from there will be the two government side, to B side and to C side. From the two government side, that government as a service, I think, provide really, the vehicle where you can just look at either you want to implement a registry or smart law or smart contract, different type of application. And we have a pilot in Dallas working with government to tracing, tracking financial flow there. And there's also a small digital identity pilot in another city we cannot disclose now. And then from the 2C side, that is, if you as a citizen want to just now to just using this to pay, and you can use BitPay. And if you just want to participate in create a digital product, you can use Twiba. And if you want to do the lending, you can just use Definer. And all of them are available in the US. And there are a lot of existing very exciting pilots in the 2B, 2C, and also to government type of applications. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Xiaochen. So I wanted to just open it up to a couple of questions. We have about 5 minutes remaining. So if you have one, just please say it nice and loud, and I'll repeat it for us. Sure. So the question was, without using too much energy, and I believe that's a reference to the cost of mining with respect to Bitcoin in particular, are there other solutions that would allow for payments at scale with the same security, stability that exists today? I'll take a quick shot at that one. And there's the proof of stake is another type of consensus mechanism that would allow for similar degrees of security and payment throughput to be usable in the near future. And there's also the idea of sidechain transactions where you can batch multiple transactions off the primary blockchain and have them recorded later, which would allow for a greater volume of payments to occur in a same period of time. But I think that Stephen is probably an even greater expert on this than I may be, and I'm sure our other two panelists have some feedback on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love talking about the energy consumption of Bitcoin. If you actually think what money is, it's about the deferral of consumption or purchasing power into the future. That's fundamentally what money does. And so we're consuming energy today to create a platform that fundamentally allows you to defer energy usage into the future. On top of that, there's a lot of benefits coming out of this technology. A lot of these mining operations are investing heavily in research to actually more directly convert solar energy into electricity to power these mining machines. So I actually think they'll drive a lot of innovation in renewable energy sources. But having said all that, we shouldn't also be open to the possibility that we could get, close to, or if not equivalent, security and decentralization out of something like proof of stake. But I think a lot of people just sort of naively look at the energy question and say, ooh, that's bad. But they don't, yeah, that's the cost side of the equation, but you're ignoring the benefit side of the equation completely. And also kind of what are you going to do about it? I mean, how do you stop it, right? So it's kind of almost a pointless question. But yeah, I had another thought there, but maybe I'll think of it in a second.
Just a quick, and there are two aspects to this. One is that from the Bitcoin side, that from the energy consumption currently, that there are a lot of renewable energy curtail, meaning that it's produced, the grid is not connected, and so then the basic renewable energy are just being wasted. So if we can just really leverage that renewable energy which are being wasted for blockchain, for Bitcoin generation, I think that's basically is just taking the waste to be in production. And of course, there's efficiency improvement from the Bitcoin mining industry. There's chips and all that advancement. So that's from the Bitcoin side. Of course, that's as what James said. That's there are improvement in terms of other consensus mechanism where that's you not only just have the privacy, have the security, but also just without using a typical proof of work type of mechanism, and which just don't need that much of energy. Yeah.
I think just curtailing this is a different perspective. I guess from my perspective, how many things can you get rewarded by using energy? Not very much. So this this is just something from a selling point of why I would tell somebody like, yeah, there's cost, there's, how can we reduce the energy from a mining rig, but how many things do we get rewarded by using energy?
Well, unfortunately, we probably won't have time for another question. It took a little bit longer than I'd hoped, but we'll be around after the panel to have individual conversations for a little while. And thank you all for attending the Future of FinTech here at Smart City Atlanta, and have a great rest of the conference.
Thank you.